Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is this. Actually, if I cannot use an electric drill, I love these drills. These are hand drills. I have seen people and I have been able to like zip through. This is one brand, but there's a lot of, they're just called manual drills. And when you, this one for instance, if I hold on to this, it's a little bigger. There's some teeny tiny ones. And I can open this up, insert my drill bit, and the drill, you know, I have all of this information on the Nomadic Toolkit, so I'm just going through it. But my drill bits I usually use are 52, which is a 16, in the hardware store. It's number 16. So you just will put your drill inside there and close it right up, as long as the handle is held down. And then you take your piece on wood and you just drill right into your piece and you're good. You know, a lot of times what I'll do is tape my piece down and drill into it. You can drill through 10 pieces all taped together if you wanted to. I did a lot of cold joints with that type of a piece. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is my bench pin. These are actually anvils. You probably can see my huge anvil in the back. People love my anvil. When I'm in my studio, it's really, really nice to have an anvil that's like an 80-pound anvil. So it's really, really nice to have that resist. So, you know, one of the things, if you're using a bench pin on your table, you don't want to put it flat on a table. It's best on a piece of rubber. But if you don't have a rubber, you can put it onto leather, build up a little bit of leather, build up, you know, just some cloth so it doesn't bounce. When you're working with your bench pin or anvil, it's really best, like you want your anvil to reach right about the top of your first bend in your thumb. So everybody's different. Plus what shoes you wear to work. Do you wear a little bit of a lift or are you like flat on the ground, you know? So you want to hit right about here. And so then when you're working with your piece, you're in a natural position where you're not hurting your wrists or your arms and you're able to do your work. Because remember, our tools, our hands are our tools as artists and especially as silversmiths. So you want to keep your body in the best amount of shape, you know, hold tools correctly. There's the ergonomics of always to hold tools. So this here, you know, instead of like when I go to use my bench pin, I will pull it up to the forefront in front of me. I won't reach over like this because that's going to hurt your back a little bit. So this is a 4x4 and it's nice and heavy. It's a good size to do any of the work that you'll need. This is the hammer that I have that goes hand in hand. So for me, when I'm working with an 80-pound anvil, I can use the tiniest lightweight hammers because I have a really strong resist under. And I talk a lot about that in forging. I want to put up some work on forging in here. I love forging work in my silversmithing. So with a smaller piece, like a 4x4 metal, I'm actually I like to use a really bigger hammer. In fact, this is one of my favorite hammers. I love this hammer because it has this beautiful, beautiful curve on it. You can see a slight curve. This is beautiful for forging, setting rivets, any type of work that I love doing. And it actually has a really beautiful handle right here. This one is I'll have to get you that one. It's I can't remember the name. But this one actually has a beautiful handle. You want to find a hammer that feels so good in your hand. You know, when you're hammering, you know, you really want to hold your hammer farther down here. And it is really the art form of using, you know, hammering your wire. Forging is such a beautiful technique, and I will show you that. But in the meantime, you don't want to be swinging your hand like this because that is not good. Your posture needs to be straight and you just really need to move your metal exactly the way it needs to go. So that's with this. You know, there's always times that you need that. Another essential with the anvil, so there's 3 tools. It's the anvil, the hammer, and then this is a rubber mallet. This actually is it's like a rubber plastic on here that is so strong. It's one of my favorites. It's a little bit heavier than normal, but this one I actually can flatten out my jewelry pieces. If I'm, you know, if my piece is curved or curl and I want to get it back flat, or I set a bezel and I need to get something flat again, this is beautiful because it does not mark up my silver or my pieces, and it gives me a beautiful flat surface. So that definitely is an essential and part of the whole kit. Okay. So then I want to show you, this is the board that I was talking about for you guys. Let me slide this over a little bit and remove these tools. Okay, I'm going to remove everything. So there's that. This actually is I'll show you the bottom of this. This actually is a rotating pan. So this pan, you know, it rotates very, very nicely. So when I'm working on my silver, I can get it from all angles. And this here is solderite. This, you can either get it soft or hard. I like to use T-pins in my work, you know, to poke into it is what I mean by that. So you can just set it up on here. This is brand new. It gets discolored, believe me. But this one actually is, will hold the heat like a piece of charcoal. So it's actually a substitute for charcoal. It holds the heat in so I can get in here and do my work. This here is, this one is a steel screen, and there's all different kinds of steel screens, but this actually lays right on top, and I work hand in hand with my steel screen and my torch, because what this screen does is holds the heat for me. I think, did I mention earlier that butane is the burns at the lowest temperature out of all the gases. So sometimes when I'm working really big, I really like to make sure that I can hold my heat as much as possible. Now remember, in that soldering, the art of soldering bezels, you're gonna find out more about this Nomadic kit, and you could actually just email me and I'll give you the whole list, you know, and the links where you can find all this material. So that's there. So this, when I can work from all angles, and of course I'd be sitting when I'm working. And so what I do here is, if I have to hold it still, I like being able to turn it, but if I have to hold it still, I will do something like set up my anvil right like this so it doesn't turn. And that makes it so easy. You know, it wants to move a lot on you. Underneath here is just an aluminum pan from the dollar store. It's not very expensive. You can get a big one, a small one. I have at different times used really a heavy gauge aluminum foil under here if I had to. But this really keeps all your work contained. It helps you find your gems. You know, it really kind of defines your area so you won't heat up the surface under your pieces. So that's what that's about. Okay. Now, hand in hand, I have got my main two pieces that I work with endlessly is my soldering pick and my paintbrush. Woo! And this is a whole intimate, oh my gosh, I love it. I do have these jars, these 3 jars. I usually have them labeled with my marker. A marker is a big part of this. I use this all through my work and what I do. And, you know, if I have a hard solder in here, I want to put a hard. There's hard, easy, and this one actually is medium. Now, I explain, you know, in here, I actually explain all about how to use these solders. I just want to show you the tools. I have a book called Intentional Metalsmithing that you can get on Amazon too. That's an essential part of it. That actually gives you the heating temperatures and, you know, everything. It's so beautifully put in here, and it's really about this very simplistic way of creating jewelry. It's not simplistic. You're creating complex pieces from a simple, you know, palette of tools to start with, you know, and then you could grow your way out if you have a studio and you want to grow your way out for there. But it's really a way to get in, not spend that much money. Okay, so I'm going to remove these. Why do I have the 3 of them? The first thing that I do, this actually is going to be an easy put in here. I do have some flux. This is a huge container. I do not carry all this flux around with me, but flux actually, you know, what I do is I'm going to pour just a little bit in here, and I use my flux throughout. I can add water in here to water it down. What flux is, there's two like, this is a liquid. There's 2 main pieces, additives, liquids, granules that I need to use in the whole process of of protecting my silver and cleaning my silver. And the other one is this pickle that I'll talk about in a minute. Okay, so this is the flux. You know, it's this color. It doesn't matter if it gets discolored. When it's out in the sun, it'll get discolored, but it's still just as powerful. And what this does is this will, first of all, this piece has to be clean, so I would need the pickle. But what I would do is I just would put a coating of flux onto my piece. You can see that this piece is actually pretty dirty. You know, it has a lot of fire scale on it. So this is called dirty in silversmithing. This dirt, this fire scale, keeps you from getting a beautiful solder in your work. So this has to be removed with pickle. And remember, these are granules. So the fire scale first, I use a crock pot when I'm in my studio. You could do it, you know, you could do this, you know, without your crock pot cold. It's good to put it on a little bit of warm, but these are granules. And what this does, it's like a salt. It's a corrosive, is what pickle is. It's a corrosive. You just put about a tablespoon and a quart of water, and this will gently and slowly but surely, I'll keep it in there for 10-15 minutes, and it will actually just keep working off all this fire scale and dirt and oils, anything on here. Because when you go this out of your piece, which I talk about in the course, you guys will get more, you have to have a super, super clean. Clean means pickled. And then you have to scrub and wash off the pickle so you can move forward into, you know, so this is how I'll clean off the pickle once it comes out of the pickle. The pickle is actually dirty too, so you need a pristine piece. And then I put the flux on, and you know, there's the flux on. So that's what I'll do, is I'll have a container of flux. And then the next thing that I do is I use my solder along with it. And I describe what the solder is. This is about 1 ounce of solder, so I order by the ounce. This is a hard, and it has the highest melting point, so I use this first. This is a medium that goes on next, and this is an easy solder that is used only a few times, you know, when you're doing your work. So there's more about this too. I just am going into very, very basic details, so I hope you guys hop on and you know, go check it out. So you just come into here, and I'm just gonna snip it all through like this. And these, by the way, are my tin snips. There's many different types of tin snips. These are, you can also use, the dollar store has bone cutters. They're called actually bone cutters. What they are is they are just really strong scissors that when you're cooking, they'll cut through bone. So you just need super strong scissors, and you can see how that just cut through so beautifully with no bother to me. I'm gonna straighten this out. And then what I'm gonna do with my tin snips is just go in. It doesn't hurt your hand at all. And you just get nice little pieces like that. That's about how big your solder needs to be. And you just continue on and just keep cutting up pieces. And that is my solder that I'll use. And you'll find out more about that. So that's pretty cool. I'm gonna go through the tools while I'm here. You guys saw the marker. You could mark up anything on your silver. If I needed to solder this piece or cut it, you know, I can say cut away here. I can say I need solder here, and you can solder on top of marker. This I love. This permanent marker is not dirty. Woo, I use it so much in all of my work. Okay. I showed you these two things. This actually, you'll see later on, I use a soldering pick to lay down my solder, to solder pieces together, and you saw the paintbrush. You know, I'll sometimes use this for all different reasons. So that's what those three. These are my 3 main pieces that always sit right by my side when I'm soldering. That's it. A little inexpensive, three items that are inexpensive, and I can really get all this silversmithing done, besides all the rest of it. Okay, I love, this is an extra, but I love these really long pliers. You know, these are a little bit crooked. I have to fix these. There's different ways I can go in and refix and oil up my tools. And so these, you know, the nice thing about these is that I can solder and put work on from afar and lay things on there, and I'm nowhere near the heat. So that's what I love about these pliers. These, I talked about the pickle, which is the corrosive. You always want to use, these copper pliers in your pots. If I were to put these steel pliers into my pickle pot, what would happen if I had a sterling silver piece in there and put this into my pickle solution mixed with water, all the copper that is in the pot would land and coat my whole sterling silver piece, so it would look like it was copper. The only way to get that off is like a peroxide. Peroxide will get that off, but anyway, you really don't want to do that in the first place. So this is the copper that's used so closely. You saw the brush. When I get pieces out of the pickle after they're nice and clean, I'll go in with my brush and use these for a number of different reasons. But it really, if I didn't have my pickle, I can get in and you can see it's starting to get cleaner with this brush. I also use the brush for a final polish. It's so amazing in a final polish. This is the same thing, but it's a pen. It's a scratch pen. I like these because I can get into all these little corners, and this is so inexpensive. It's the same type of steel that this is here. Just getting into all the corners and cleaning out. So this one is essential too. I love it. It's not expensive. Okay. These are my locking pliers. These need to be repaired too. But again, if I was soldering and I wanted to come in with a piece, of course my gem wouldn't be here. I've got a gem in here. But if I was soldering, I could literally hold my piece like this, and I would lay this on the side. It could be all the way, right up to the end. And I would come in and I would get this nice and hot. I talk a lot about, you'll see when you get to the soldering video, I talk a lot about where to put your heat. That's a secret of silversmithing. 90% here, 10% there, 75% here, 25% here. That's all interesting. I love numbers and I love those percentages. And that's the important thing for soldering. These are my pliers that I absolutely adore. These are very expensive. These are orthodontic tools. The thing I love about them as a silversmith is when you're doing your work, you want to make sure that you're not putting any pressure or tension onto your carpal tunnel. So you really want to stay with tools that are ergonomically set up so they work really, really well. And these pliers are that way. They're, we don't have springs on them, so they work really well, which in fact, there's another video inside here to pop on, and I show you how to take apart an inexpensive pair of pliers to let them really work well without springs. So many of my students would come into a workshop and they would have like a under $20 pair of pliers that was a very poor quality. It had springs in there, and it's very hard to do the work. These are some of the tools that you really need to have a good set of pliers. So I show you how to take apart the springs, how to polish them up, and how to get ready and do your work. So I like to use, a lot of times when I'm doing my work, I use the surface of the table to help lean into pieces and do the work. So I like to use, this one here is a round nose. I find these three are the most essential. This is a round nose plier. They have, they're round nose and tapered, so I can really get a lot of twists or anything in there. These are chain nose, and these are nice and flat, and I can get in there and really grip. They do not have teeth on them. That's important for me because I do not want them to mark up my metal. No teeth. None of these have teeth. And this is a chain nose. Oh my gosh, I use these pliers endlessly. They're tapered to a point and they're chain nose. And these I just find so essential and are probably my favorite recently out of the three. So that's that. The other thing is these wire snips. So these wire snips, these I can use, these are pretty heavy duty. I can use, cut a 12 gauge wire, which is super thick, all the way down to like a 24 gauge, which is super, super tiny. And so these really work well. They don't get damaged. They're a nice, hard, sturdy. They're on the Toolkit. And this is for cutting wire, and they're actually called double flush. So it's important to get double flush. What double flush does is when you cut a side of a wire, it gives you a tabletop surface. So many pliers will give you that pinch where it's almost coming to a point and pinch. And that's not easy to use when you're silversmithing, putting in earring posts, soldering pieces together. It doesn't work that well. So sometimes when I'm cutting something, I use my table so I can save my wrist. I'll put a piece of wire in there and just literally lean into it like this. So I actually like to be, a lot of times I'm upstanding, and I'm, not all the time sitting down like this. It's good to be at a really good position. So that's all of these. These sometimes, like, you really even can cut around your work with this piece. And what I want to tell you guys is that I have used this toolkit for everything that I've done. And it's was such a beautiful challenge for 3 years. It was amazing. I have just one more set of tools to show you, and that is my jeweler saw. This is for simple cuts, but this is my jeweler saw, and this is my bench pen. And these work hand in hand. I have blades here that come with it. Generally speaking, you want a very, very tiny blade. I have a whole video in here about how to use the jeweler saw. You're welcome to pop onto that. I'll just show you what it looks like as part of the tool set. And I set it up, I put my piece in here, and I'm just doing my solder work. Of course, I don't have a blade on, but this is really what it looks like. And I'm sitting, and this is a whole art form and the staple of your silversmithing. Your jeweler saw. Your jeweler saw, your torches, all of this little setup here is essentially what you need. Oh my gosh, you can get so much done. I've done work with my Nomadic toolkit for Coachella pieces. I've done museum exhibits through New York Institute of Art. I've done, all through different museums, tours. And I've also done Coachella and some Hollywood pieces and Fashion Runway. So my work, it was really a beautiful challenge for me just to do for 3 years to see if I really could hold in and use this tool set. And I did it. It was amazing. And now sometimes when I'm in my studio, I get out my drills and get out my acetylene, but you guys make the choice. This is a good way to start. So I hope you guys enjoy this, and make sure you pop over to those other videos. I have a really beautiful beginning silversmithing, and that is called The Art of Soldering Bezel. So enjoy, and please subscribe.